everybody. Welcome back to Coco and Daltz. We are real people bringing you real reviews of all the latest TV shows and movies that are streaming on Disney+, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. I'm not Daltz.
And I'm not Coco.
And today, our real review is of High Score, a 6-episode docuseries on Netflix about video games. Daltz, why don't you give the good people a summary of what we watched?
Why, thank you, Coco, for that very nice toss.
The dulcet tones of my toss.
That's a very nice toss. So as Coco mentioned, this is a documentary on Netflix, and it's about video games. And it starts with the nascent days of Atari. And it goes all the way through from Atari to Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and then ends with 2D to 3D computer graphics and how they came to be.
Yeah, it didn't kind of go up till today. It just kind of went through, I think, like the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So it was a very short, like 15, 20-year time span.
Yeah, so 6 episodes, like you said. They all landed on August 19th. So we binge-watched it because we're really desperate and we're looking for stuff to do. And Coco, at this point now, has no fight in her game. So whenever I suggest something, she says, yeah, whatever. So that's why we ended up watching this. I'm a big documentary fan. I've seen lots of documentaries on video games, actually. There's one that was most recently on the founding of Atari, which, so the main cheese there, Nolan Bushnell, was the guy who was considered the godfather of video games and helped bring Atari to power. There was a good one on that I saw. This is a genre that is very male heavy.
Yeah. They did do a good job of trying to get diverse voices in there, though.
That's where I was going to go with that, Coco. So thank you for the segue and Randor stealing my thunder. Yeah. But this is not just like a bunch of white dudes sitting around talking about Pac-Man or you know, Doom.
Duke Nukem.
One of the most horrific video games of all time. And it was, like you said, Coco, there was a lot of diverse voices in here, which was very interesting. So like one of the sons of a video game designer who would happen to be black, and sort of his struggles that he faced very early on in Silicon Valley, just being different and not necessarily being treated differently. I didn't hear a lot of talk about racism, but I'm sure there was some. But it's just a matter of him being just not looking like anybody else around him, and that sort of thing. So This was, to me, a bit of a risk to watch it because it was 6 episodes. They're 37 to 45 minutes long, I think, in length. So not a huge gamble, but a bit of a gamble. It was a little confusing at times. I don't know if you found this, Coco, but it wasn't linear from one point to the next. There were some times when, during this one particular episode, where it would jump back or jump forward, or there would be concurrent events that they would try to cover. But you can't really do that when you're in a linear medium, right? Like if you're talking A to B, it's not necessarily the way to do it to say, oh, by the way, at the same time, this also happened, and then go back to this, and then... So there was some, maybe that was just my small peanut brain that was not able to fathom that, but it was overall pretty well done. I'd say it's a pretty low risk investment of your time. It is chronological, so if you're going to watch it, you probably want to start with number 1, if that's what you're interested in. If you're interested in just jumping in on Doom or some of the Street Fighter stuff or some of the nasty things at the end there, maybe you just want to jump in on that by itself. Coco, I know you're a huge video game fan, so what did you think of this one?
Well, yeah, my parents refused to buy me any kind of gaming console when I was a kid because they were legit like, no child of ours is going to sit on her ass playing video games when she could be outside playing real games or working.
Right.
So
it wasn't a devil worship thing.
Right. So I have very little experience playing video games. It was always, oh, we're going to my cousin's house and they have Atari, so I'm going to play all the Frogger all night and not talk to anybody.
So in your family, your cousins were like in vacation where they went to see the other cousins, and they were all like looking at porn mags and stuff like that.
Right, totally. And like stirring Kool-Aid with their arms and
right, and drinking beer. And,
right, totally.
So that was your cousins in relation to you in your mind. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So I enjoyed it though.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was like you said, it was very low risk. 6 episodes, sure, but the longest was like 45 minutes. So we probably could have done all 6 of them in a day if we had had time to do it. They didn't feel draggy. They actually had some pretty funny production values. Like they would set people up to do funny little vignettes and stuff. They interviewed a ton of people. Like they had a lot of the stuff that you don't even think about, like the game design. They interviewed those guys. They interviewed the artist. They interviewed the artist who came up with Sonic the Hedgehog and like how he came up with the idea for a hedgehog as opposed to like a rabbit or whatever. So there was some good knowledge in there. I enjoyed it. I did like that they tried to highlight, before this guy got hired at EA, all the players in Madden were white because that was all the technology could do. But once he got hired, he was like, the majority of the players in the NFL are African American. So can we change that to reflect reality? So, and I didn't know this either. They interviewed another family who apparently way back in the day, if you wanted to play Pong, you had to buy a Pong console. And if you wanted to play Frogger, you had to buy a Frogger console. So the producers interviewed the family of the guy who came up with cartridges. So instead of buying all these different consoles for all these different games, you just buy one Atari and then you just buy the Frogger cartridge, the Pong cartridge, the Donkey Kong cartridge. So
essentially the basis of modern gaming.
Right, exactly.
Home gaming.
And even like VHSs and DVD players and all, MP3 players and stuff. So, so I can't imagine having to buy like a different console for every U2 album or whatever, right? Like here's my Achtung Baby console and here's my Zooropa console. So
we'd need more space.
Oh my God, we'd have a house just for our consoles,
right?
And then so it was definitely interesting. I was kind of surprised that they stopped in the 90s, because it seems like, it's been 20 years since the 90s, so it's been 30 years since the beginning of the 90s.
A lot has changed.
Yeah, exactly. It was really funny to hear like, we uploaded Doom to AOL at midnight on December 10th, 1993, and people all over the world are trying to download it. And I was like, how did that happen? Like, how did people even know about it? Like, that's crazy. So.
Yeah. What was the internet like in those days?
Right. Totally. Like, I remember what it was like in 97, just trying to get online. And I can't even imagine trying to play an interactive game in 93 on all those dial-up modems with AOL. And then like your grandma calls and you're kicked off and you're like, no.
You get a high score, working on a personal best high score, and then somebody calls and orders a pizza or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Like, you're screwed and then you got to start over again.
Yeah, totally. The last episode was about, speaking of Doom, violence in video games.
Yes.
And I don't have kids and I'm not a kid, so I thought it was really funny. Like,
Are you sure about that last
Well,
part?
mentally I'm a child, but they showed a lot. Like I said, I haven't played a lot of video games and I love Ms. Pac-Man, and that's as far from violent as you can get. So they were showing clips of like Street Fighter.
Unless you're a cookie.
Yeah. And Mortal Kombat. And it was so over the top and hilarious, just like ripping people's heads off. And I was like dying laughing. And then they intersperse it with shots of congressional hearings on video game violence, and people are all outraged about the children being corrupted. And I was like, but it's funny. It's so over the top. It's not remotely realistic. Like,
I was glad to see that, because that gave you an objective perspective of video games. Like, I didn't want this to be a big puff festival and how great video games are and everything like that. But like, video games have changed society. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think that that's one of the reasons that in the wrong hands, like anything else, it can be bad. Like, it can cheapen life. And it was, I'm just shooting a pixelated person. I'm not shooting an actual person. So in some people who are perhaps not mentally solid don't make that distinction, and the next thing you know, you've got a mass shooting. So I would be interested to see the correlation between school shootings and video game rise in popularity? Because I bet you there is one. I bet you there is a correlation. And I'm not all Tipper Gore on this. I'm not like, let's ban everything. I mean, I think having warnings is the way to go. The way they eventually, one of the episodes dealt with that and how the ratings eventually were slapped onto video games. And
but then they made the point that the more you tell kids they can't have something, the more they want it.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can still get somebody to buy a game for you. And
right.
Then, but it is some sort of acknowledgement of the severity of it. Like, I had never seen the Doom game, and it's a pretty nasty piece of work. Like, I mean, ripping a guy's head off and then his like spinal column is dangling from his severed head. I mean, that's just nasty business. But it's really cool too if you're a teenage boy, I guess.
Yeah.
But you've got to weigh the pros and cons, and I think they did a good job in that in this series. I was surprised that they shut it down, and maybe this was one of those things where like, oh, we got some content, let's get it out there, and maybe we'll do the next 10 years or 20 years in another 6 episodes or something like that, because video gaming has completely changed. I mean, they did talk a little bit about esports, and some of the competitions that they have, but that was again what I was referring to earlier. It was kind of chronologically out of order. Like, we're talking about esports. Esports were not a thing in 1993.
No,
So there is a little bit of a throw to today, but it was mostly 93 and earlier. So like a 10-year kind of documentary. But really, it was pretty well done, and journalistically, it seemed to have a good amount of balance. It didn't seem to be like it was all how great are video games and how awful are people who oppose them or anything like that. And it wasn't just a bunch of fanboys talking either. There was some good balance in there. So I thought it was overall pretty well done.
I felt kind of bad though, because they did interview like 3 people who, prior to esports, there would be like the Sega World Championships, and they interviewed the people who won those. And it's like, oh man, you peaked when you were like 18.
Right.
I felt so bad for them. Like, on the one hand, like, oh, that's really super cool that you won this worldwide competition. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, but
now what do you do?
Yeah, now what do you do after that? Like, I think the first person who won like the Atari championships or something, like, they actually went into video game design and stuff, and they ended up working in the industry. But the other 2 people they interviewed, there was one guy, I think he's coaching an esports team now, but then there were 2 other people who won in like the 80s and the 90s, and it's like, I don't know what they're really doing now. Like, how do you become an insurance salesman after you win like some global Sonic competition or something?
Well, there was that one guy who had won a competition, and then he ended up working for some mainstream firm, and then his company said to him, hey, it was in Japan.
Yeah, that was the esports guy. He was now coaching like an esports team. Yeah,
and he was sitting in the back of the room twiddling his thumbs. He's like, this is not nearly as thrilling as a video game, looking at flow charts. And
winning like the Japanese Street Fighter competition or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And there was, we should mention too, there was a very heavy Japanese presence in this, which was appropriate because a lot of the games and a lot of the technology came from Japan. So they talked to a lot of the key players, and I'm sure a lot of those guys that they talk to are sort of the idols and the Kurt Cobains of video game production and design, because they were pretty cool and they knew what they were talking about, and they were pioneers obviously in those days with Sega and with Nintendo. So there's a good balance there. It's not strictly that's one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of these Netflix productions now, which I think is great. As Netflix takes over the world, they're looking at how can we bundle this, and so that it's not just a show for the United States, but it's also a show for Japan. Or it's also short. Like we looked at the when we did White Lines, the series about Ibiza. I mean, that had all sorts of appeal. Not only was it good for North America, but it was good for Europe too, for English-speaking Europe as well. So I see a lot of this, and I think that it's in some ways it's transparent and it's not of pure intentions, but at the other side of the coin is it gives you a broader appeal, and it also gives you a broader balance. So you're not just talking to Silicon Valley, you're actually talking to the Japanese version of Silicon Valley as well. So it gives you a more full picture.
I think I read Netflix worldwide has something like 197 million subscribers, maybe.
So just below what we have.
Yeah, true. Yeah, which I will tell you where you can find us if you're one of our 200 million subscribers in a moment.
Oh, are we done?
No, I was just. So, yeah, it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
I liked it. I'd give it like a B.
How many joysticks up would you give it? Not a euphemism.
I was going to say, you'll find out later tonight, baby.
Oh, I will. Golly. This is my lucky day.
I'm going back to the letter grades. I'll give it a B.
You're going back to letter grades?
Yeah.
Okay. I give it a 1.5 joysticks up, probably.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. It was no Trailer Park Boys, but,
What is?
That's a hard, that's several joysticks up. There's a
Right.
euphemism there that I don't want to make with
That's
Trailer Park Boys.
Several Julians holding whiskey sours up or whatever. Jack and Coke. There we
Several kitties in the shed.
go. Yeah, totally. Several houndstooth button downs and track pants outfits up.
We could keep going with this. By the
totally
way, not that this is a good sign of my character, but on my Facebook feed yesterday, it showed up that the Trailer Park Boys now has the houndstooth shirt that Ricky wears is now back in stock.
I know something Santa's going to get Dalt's for Christmas. Yeah.
I think Ricky should get another one because every time I see him wearing it, it's got like 5 holes in it.
When it's stained. Right. I wonder if that thing has ever been washed or if they just give it back to wardrobe and
I don't know.
yeah.
So now that we've totally gone off track and into the Trailer Park Boys territory.
Sorry, listener.
Can you take us out of here, Coco?
Yes, if you are one of our 200 million subscribers, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. Please rate and review us there. You can also find us on Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, TuneIn, IMDb. The first two,
Yes.
the second and third seasons are on IMDb. The first is still to come. You can also find us on Ghana if you are in India, although I believe that might also serve
The subcontinent?
yes, other parts of Asia, and on YouTube. If you would like to let us know what you think of the podcast, if you want to let us know what you want to hear us review in the future, you can email us at cocoandadults@gmail.com. You can also follow us and like us on Facebook and Twitter. We are at Coco and Dalts. And you can find us on the interwebs at cocoandadults.com, where we have reviews of other things besides what we talk about on the podcast. And we also have the Buzz blog, which I recently relaunched. It's sort of my reaction to entertainment news and celebrity gossip that Dalts does not care about. But
I thought it was about bee making.
Oh, that's true.
Beehives and
there is. I'm doing
making.
a graphic for it, and there is a bee in the graphic. So
okay.
yeah, okay.
So that's why you want to go back to letter grades?
You're funny.
Looking.
There you go. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, find us anywhere you can and let us know what you think.
We know you have a listener, Joyce, so...
That's true also.
I totally screwed that up.
Daltz has been drinking the whiskey sours.
Right, and it's only 2:04 in the afternoon, so...
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
So we know you have a choice, so thank you for choosing us, listener, and for another week, I'm definitely not Coco.
And I'm definitely not Daltz.